Hello, everyone. We're back. Uh, yeah, I guess, actually, I don't think we were actually scheduled to record last week, but even if we were, we wouldn't have been able to because I've been sick, as you can probably still hear. So hopefully you can hear me through my even more congestedness. Elliot is with us. Hello, Elliot. You are looking very angelic today. With your little
Yeah, lots of eyeballs.
eyeballs. Before we started recording, I was listening to one of the greatest bands of all time, Talking Heads, and they talk about a wheel inside a wheel. So, uh, you know,
Oh, is
um,
his name Ezekiel? Did he see the wheel way up in the air?
um, we're back to talk about memes. We're here just for the memes. We're gonna talk about a we're gonna talk about fiction, which was a big leap for Elliot, and so we're very proud of him that he
Boo,
was willing to read fiction. Um,
boo.
yeah, sweeten the deal a little bit by having fiction set within the SCP universe. And Elliot informs me that, quote, when I read fiction that's in an encyclopedic form, I like it, unquote. So so it was okay. Again, I Elliot's constantly trying to red pill me on Time War, which he has, and various other mathy things, which I think are unfortunately just beyond my capacity to understand. But as the humanities person in this wandering humanists group, I'm trying to what would it be? A paper pill, a lit pill? I'm gonna lit pill.
Paper
Uh
pill. I love
Paper
it.
pill,
Paper
I don't
pill.
know. Yeah. Uh, Letter pill,
Well,
I
this
don't know,
word.
something like that.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
something.
word cells. It's word cells and shape rotators is one of the memes out there. So you're trying to make me a word cell.
I'm trying to make you a word cell. I do, yeah. I've gotten you so far to do some T.S. Eliot, which is great. We've done some Tolkien, which is great, and so now we're doing a little bit of sci-fi.
Oh,
Uh,
it's like the Iron Giant when it wakes up and discovers morality and stops being a robot, right?
yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to do to you because I'm actually worried that you might be like, you know what, maybe we are better underneath the AI gods, and I'm like, no, no, yeah.
Well, I thought that for a bit, and then I was like, "Oh shit, I know my people. We can't pull this off at all."
It terrifies me that that's the reason you changed your mind. We need to. There's a better reasons to change your mind on that, but that's okay as long as you change your mind. Um, so we're talking about a somewhat recent sci-fi novel called "There Is No Antimemetics Division" by the author. His pen name is Quantum, which is very cool. Sam Hughes is his real name. He's from England. Seems like a pretty cool guy. I listened to an interview with him from about a year ago about the same book, really getting into the book itself, right, into the process of writing and things like that. And I'm somebody who has done a little bit of fiction, actually, not published. I'm only published in nonfiction, but I'm trying to see if I can weasel my way into some short story collection somewhere. So for me, that was fascinating. I think for Elliot, that was probably very boring, the process of writing. So what we're doing that stands alone, right? As it's a great standalone interview. What we're doing today is not so much of a like, how did you write this story kind of thing. Obviously, Quantum isn't here joining us. We're gonna try to go full theory from word cell to theory cell and try to really not necessarily take apart the story per se, although there will be spoilers. So if you do want to read it, I do recommend the book. It's only like $3 on Kindle, I think. And actually, you can read the first half of it for free on the SCP website. But then what Quantum did is he wrote the entries for SCP and then expanded them into a novel. So there's sections in the novel that are not up on the SCP website, I believe. So it's $3 on Kindle. I think that's a fairly good deal. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It is not as dense as something like this book, which I'm currently slowly working my way through. It's not quite Cyclonopedia level dense. Cyclonopedia is basically continental philosophical theory masquerading as horror. I think there is no antimemetics division is a little bit better. It's more story. There is a lot of cool philosophy in there. There's a lot of cool ideas. It asks a lot of cool questions, but it's a little bit more narrative. So if you're not if you're more of a word cell, less of a theory cell, it straddles those two worlds pretty well, I think. But
And
yeah,
even if you're a theory cell and you love science fiction, I
most
would
theory
say
cells do.
this. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? So I would say this is probably narratively speaking, I wouldn't put it on the same level of Ender's Game, but I would say that it has the same kind of density as Ender's Game,
Yeah.
right? And the
Yeah.
same like ability to consider interesting questions,
And
right?
for me, we're using all the cells in the files lately. As a cinephile, I could not help but think about Memento. Um, Particularly because the story has a lot to do with memory or lack thereof, or lack of an ability to remember. So check, check, check for Memento. But also the story is non-linear. Check, like Memento. Um, it doesn't go backwards like Memento, but it does jump around, and it is one of these things where you find out stuff later that makes things make more sense. So it's going to ask you to step outside of linear time to a certain extent, which is cool, because you got to fight the time. You got to fight the time war, and so it messes around with time, which is cool. Yeah, I just
But it does it in a really interesting way because it doesn't, because a lot of times, okay, there's two ways to mess with time. To mess with causal time and to mess with like memory time, I
perceived
guess, is
time.
maybe two
Perceived
ways.
time. Yeah.
And this is pure perceived time. So there's no cheap tricks in terms of like, oh, just kidding, I wrote myself into a corner. It's much more of like if you basically in this universe, there's infinite ability to write and rewrite and re-remember somebody's memory within certain very decent constraints that he lays out, basically,
Yeah.
right? They're well constrained, his sci-fi magic system, right?
Yeah.
But
Which
like,
makes
yeah,
it very believable. Like
totally.
like
Actually, it feels like it happens right now. It's kind of like Men in Black, actually. In
it
that
is
way.
a bit like, yeah, there's Men in Black elements as well. Yeah, I was just, yeah, that was another thing that had come to my mind. Sorry, keep going.
Oh no, that's basically everything. If
Yeah,
you want to
there's a cool mix
keep
of
rolling.
everything. There was a little bit of ragging on X-Files, which I, as an X-Files fan, did not appreciate, but that's okay. It's not forever. Not everyone can enjoy the sheer brilliance that is X-Files. That's fine.
Maybe he was anti-camp. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Although to put a pin in that, Elliot, I do want to do
Yeah,
some
totally.
X-Files. We need to do some X-Files. There's some
I
really good.
do love X-Files. Holy
There's a
shit.
few amazing episodes that we should actually break down a bit.
I totally agree.
And since apparently the aliens are just coming even more frequently too, and they're like everywhere now, why not talk about
Yeah,
the
right.
people who try to go find them? Anyhow, yeah. So
One of my favorite characters in literature is the Smoking Man.
Smoky
No
Man is
joke.
outstanding. Like, just one of the greatest villains because he's so
Honestly.
likable, kind of.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
okay, that's for the X-Files episode.
We'll do X-Files in a little bit here. Yeah. But so there is no Antimemetics Division. I confess, and I do think I confess. Well, I'll start with this.
But there is one Lord.
I do. And you're gonna wait for the end. Yeah. Anyhow, I almost got kicked off of YouTube there with what I just said. That's fine. No, I confess I actually hadn't read. I didn't even know anything about SCP. Now, I think that's anti-memetics work right there, because I probably should have. It's like, how did I not know anything about this? But I just, the internet's a big place, and a lot of us inhabit our weird little corners, and we burrow really deeply into our corners. It's weird because that's like an adjacent corner to mine, and I don't know how I didn't know about it, but so that's weird.
Well, and I've known about SCP for a very long time because it's right up my alley, right? You know what I mean? Like the internet, it literally, I participated in the Star Wars extended universe through literally reading the Star Wars extended universe Wikipedia, right? I didn't read any of the fiction. I read only the Wikipedia. So SCP is totally up my angle of just like Wikipedia articles that are horror monsters and sometimes not horror monsters, kind of X-Filesy, really. Like,
Yeah.
if you imagine, like, if the X-Files is a whole ass library.
It's very Fortian, like Charles Fort.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just weird to me. Yeah, I love X-Files. I'm like back in grad school. It was a huge, still am a fan. The lighter seasons kind of went off a little bit, but the first two seasons, excuse me, sorry, still getting over what I had, of like shows like Tanis, podcasts like Tanis. I love the shit out of Tanis. Like, just weirdness. Twin Peaks is like really one of the greatest shows ever. I also contend that kind of stuff is totally up my alley. I just apparently missed SCP. I think it was actually antimemetics at work. I think I actually probably did know about it, and then it was purged out of my memory somehow. The cool
No
thing
doubt.
about sorry, I got a cough. The cool thing about SCP is that, and I didn't, again, I've never heard of this before because antimemetics. Is that there's no set canon, which is kind of neat. You can kind of just do whatever you want, and in that
It's
way,
a meme ecosystem, if you
well,
will.
it is a meme ecosystem, and in that way too, it's also a lot like organic, whatever that means. Let's say pre-digital folklore, where
Yes.
there were multiple different versions of this. Will connect, I promise. I'm a folklorist, so I have to make this point. People like to think of there's one version of Snow White. Wrong. Yeah, wrong.
Yep.
There are
Yep.
so many different versions of Snow White. What happened is that some guys, in this case, the Grimm brothers, or did they? There's a whole conspiracy theory about that. We'll have to get into it at some point on the show here. Were they actually doing what they said they did? The Grimm brothers theoretically went out, talked to somebody, recorded it, codified it, printed it. Now that is the version, but it's only the version because it was printed and it was in the seminal text collection. I mean, Grimm's Fairy Tales is great, right? Like whatever the English title is, the initial one, the Fairy Tales for Children and Home, or whatever it is. Yeah, great stories. But what people what moderns or postmoderns don't realize is that that was just like one of many versions with many different outcomes, and that's true for like all folk tales. And it's kind of true. You could make a strong argument. It's true for all stories, at least all mythic stories. But there's something about writing it down that solidifies it into a version, and then that's set. It's cool that SCP sort of, maybe paradoxically, is all written, right? Or it's all like people writing down. So you think, oh, it's very set because it's written. No. It's actually very organically alive in a similar way to older folklore, to oral folklore. It's almost like oral but written. So that was a really cool discovery for me as just somebody who's a little bit more that's more my field, right? So I was like, wow, this, like, people are just like leaning into the multiple. There doesn't need to be one canon for everything, and you can, it's all this SCP Foundation stuff, but SCP can be what you want it to be. I think that's great. I'm actually a little tempted in a good way. I think I might write a few. I have an idea for one cool anomalous entity that would be fun to add to their to the mix. So it's also great that you have this SCP online, but then people are writing people are doing artwork based on it. People are writing, like in the case of Quantum, writing books based on it. I think that's awesome. Even just
there have been whole mainstream memes that are pure SPC inventions. If you're familiar with or they were
heavily inspired by
codified into SCP and then got blown out to the rest of the internet. Like Slender Man is an example.
Okay, I didn't know that Slender Man started out as an SCP.
Well, so he made if he didn't start out as an SCP, he certainly got germinated and then catapulted out. I'm pretty sure Siren Head started out as an SCP.
Okay.
So this kind of slender monster with kind of like one of those air sirens for a head. There's several other like very famous internet things that when you read the SPC, you're like, oh shit, this is where that's from. Yeah. It's because, like you say, SPC has an ethic of yes and
SCP.
And it's or SCP. Sorry, SCP. Yeah. SCP has I've Googled that wrong a couple of times.
Elliott, are you dyslexic?
I don't. Mine might be. I'm certainly ADHD. That's for sure. I hesitate. Although I do read much better with the dyslexic font on, so who knows? Yep. But point being is that. Point being is that So the freaking SC whatever the people. The premise is that it's a secret black site government institution that's kind of like Men in Black that. It's not quite as alien centric, right? Most of the phenomena are earth bound, so to speak. But it's imagine if you were hired on as like a case file agent or an admin and you had to look up a file of like crazy shit. You'd be like, okay, this being is a ghost, right? And it's like, we have contained this ghost. It's like, how do you contain a ghost? It's like, we have this incredibly sophisticated Ghostbusters system, right? Where we vacuum it up and it's got to be put into this little cube and then it can be let out into this larger cube room and there's a lot of stuff and you know, these certain people are allowed to be in there or not, and all this stuff. It's a very, very fun universe. But what's cool about this story is that it turns all of that stuff into a narrative, right? And the narrative isn't just like a monster of the week type of thing, and it's not just a cosmic monster of the week, although it is. It's one of those fun. You know, for me, it reminded me of Douglas Hofstadter's Meta-Mathemagical Themas, which is a book of Douglas Hofstadter's stuff, and a lot of like self-referential sentences and self-updating words and sentences and books and meanings and whatnot, and you know what that means. And this book ends up playing with a lot of those exact same ideas.
Yeah. So again, let's to kind of to just deal with the story just enough. There's going to be some slight spoilers, but not. I don't even think we need to really get into the spoilers too much, because I'm more interested in like the concepts that Quantum is playing with here. So there's well, Elliott and I will say this. I guess I'll start out by saying I don't know exactly how to conceptualize the big monster in the story, because it's kind of on purpose almost impossible to conceptualize. It is an anti-meme. It is an idea that destroys ideas, which if maybe, now this is how I interpreted it, but Elliott, feel free to disagree. So this is what I got out of this story. This is a sign of a good sci-fi, right? That if you're left with this much, it's good confusion, right? Like, oh my gosh, what the fuck is this thing? It's an idea that destroys ideas, and you would maybe think that, okay, if that idea destroys knowledge of itself, it's relatively safe because you just won't see it, and it's there in the background, and you kind of can't know about it. But it's not like that. It's an idea that destroys knowledge of itself and any ideas that it comes into contact with. Okay, that's a problem because it's very hungry, right? So it's consuming ideas, and that includes like all of your memories, all of your personality, and maybe slight spoiler here, it can also do crazy like physical manifestations of its chaotic power. And so then the question is like, how doth one combat this? How do you fight that? Like something that is so dangerous that you kind of have to keep track of it, but by keeping track of it, you make it stronger. That's how that's what that would, to me at least, was like the central philosophical challenge for the characters in the story. But I'm curious about like, and I guess, and that's kind of what that's so an all-consuming destructive gobbling meme. That's sort of how that's what I think this anti-meme is. But I'm because I know that we've been discussing a little bit about what an anti-meme is.
Yes.
And so like, let's try to figure, that's what I got from the story, but I'm curious about what you like. What is, according to your interpretation of what you read, what is an anti-meme?
Okay, yeah. So I'll briefly say that my interpretation, the closest graspable, I guess, example for me of this being, I would say, is Bill Cipher is a rough correlate. And that's from Disney's Gravity Falls, which is a fantastic show. But anyway, he's kind of a cosmic being who sometimes exists in and out of time and blah blah blah, all this stuff. I'll think about an anti-meme like in a different way, I think, right? Which is that, okay, so we have memories, right? And our memories help us to kind of, it's hard to say anything but remember, right? But recall, right? It gives us a notion of persistence of things, right? So when we turn around, we're like, yeah, I know what's behind me. It's a building, blah, blah. I can look behind me. And at some point, our memory is good enough that if that building got torn down, we'll be, yeah, there used to be a building there, right? Now, similarly, like if I was walking in the forest one day, right, and I saw some footprints, I would be like, okay, I remember what those footprints looked like, right? So one way to think about that is
they're huge, and they're simian, and they're gigantic. And then Elliott makes a cast mold of them and puts them on display.
and then I'd sell them for lots of money
Yes.
in this big fund.
Yep.
No, so basically, like, I find some of those things. Well, suppose that these footprints, either the footprints themselves, and this is what's really funky, right? It's not the mud around the footprint. Suppose the kind of hoof of the animal was such that whenever it took a step, it was specifically designed to create an impression that encouraged the soil around it to collapse in on itself or something, right? Suppose that every time it took a step, it was like a self-obfuscating footstep of some variety. That's a start for what an anti-meme is, right? And now suppose, yes, now suppose that now suppose that we have like a sentence or an experience or a thought in your head, right? And you have you have an idea that enters your head that is constructed such that it sort of fills in your memory behind you and kind of self-erases. Now, that might sound totally wild and like, Elliot, you're talking about witchcraft. I think it is kind of funny because Collin told me, he's like, oh my God, this is why I wanted you to read this story, because as soon as I thought of one example, I thought of like 15 examples of anti-memes, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's a great image of its footprints collapsing on themselves. Yeah. So there's the anti-meme, which is the big bad in many ways, but then there's also this notion of, because there's actually there's sort of, because SCP is ever expanding, you can kind of make the divisions of the foundation be whatever you want them to be. So there's the antimemetics division. There's also countermemetic. There's the countermemetic division. So there's this notion too, there's a kind of that's one of the conflicts, at least the philosophical conflicts that I saw in the novel. This is really a book club reading, and that's fine. I actually read it, so it's unlike a book club. As did Elliot.
Yeah, we all
read it. But what is the central conflict? No, but on a philosophical level, you have this sort of on a narrative level, and then on a philosophical level, the anti-meme is the big bad. But then, so it's like, how do mortals who are who are super reliant on, 100% reliant on memory? I would argue that memories are really what we are. Like, memory is you. Memory is me. Memory is what yourself is made out of. I would argue.
Memory is certainly our tribe, absolutely. Right? Yeah. I don't think that's crazy at all, right? Like, that's why you have anyway, regardless, I won't get too far off that right now. No, but fine. Yeah.
But no, and so I think there's this idea too, right? Like, Marianne Wheeler, one of the main characters in the story, is like, they're trying to figure out like what do you do, right? To like,
oh, so she's the head of the antimemetics division, to be clear.
Yeah, but like, what do you do? So if you have this idea, this meme that is all consuming, you need it to replace it with something so that people can stop. Like, you need to replace it with something or you need to create an idea that will counter it. So a counter meme. And that is done in insanely cool, crazy, mind-bending ways. I think I'm a fan of the story.
No, I thought it was well done as well.
But so like a counter meme, I kind of don't. I know what I have an inkling, an idea of what I think a counter meme is. I'm sort of uncertain about what the story actually purports. Like what in the story, what a counter meme actually is. But I have some ideas about it. So before I do even more, spiraling on that, Elliot, so we've talked a little bit about, or sort of we've introduced the idea of anti-meme. What's for you as a counter meme?
Okay, yeah. So
for you, or what you saw in the story, like, how does a counter meme work, and how does it specifically help stop anti-memes?
Totally. So I think we've mentioned this before on this particular show, but before we go too much further in the memes direction here, because I think it will really help the counter meme scenario to remember that the word meme, M-E-M-E, right, literally is a mental replacement. I believe Richard Dawkins is the one who coined the term, although he might have taken it from someone else, that a meme is a thought-based correlation, right, for a gene, right? And a gene is a piece of biological of life code, right, so to speak, a piece of life-based writing that encodes messages for getting things done in cells, right? In in living cells, right? And so genes literally are computer code for producing proteins mostly, I believe, and getting getting other commands done within your body. So here's the deal: is that there are viruses, right, which hijack these processes, right? And they inject little bits of DNA or RNA, which is the code bits, right? Genes. They literally inject genes into you. Your body reads those genes and says, oh, hey, I'm supposed to produce these kind of proteins, right? And so it produces these kind of proteins, and oh, snap, it's more viruses. And so the viruses then take over the cell, more or less, right? And end up exploding the cell.
Remember what we learned in high school. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Well, and I think that's really important. That's another interesting thing. The mitochondria,
that's a meme in and of itself. I don't know if the mitochondria.
Yes.
Have you seen that? Okay, you've seen that. Yeah.
Well, no, and that is a meme in and of itself. And here's the thing: is that mitochondria have a totally separate genome from your genome, right? And are almost like a parallel organism embedded zipper style, so to speak, within you. As far as I understand,
we have metachlorians, is what we're trying to say.
We have mimichlorians.
We have mimichlorians. Full of them.
Because the mitochondria is almost its own parallel living nemosystem within your genosystem that propagates alongside of you, and you co-resonate with each other, so to speak. You coexist together. But so okay, why do I blah 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 say all that stuff is because if viruses and bacteria can be thought of as sort of memes, right, that are created by genes to try to propagate the genes, right, then you have anti memes, right? Things that or you have viruses have anti memes. They have memes that your body will forget that they are viruses, right, and ignore them and bypass various systems, right? So those are anti memes. Forget me. And then there are counter memes that both viruses and your body has, right? Your body has a whole bunch of genetic code stored up, basically saying, or it's not really genetic code, it's little protein bits, but regardless, little protein bits that are like, hey, if this bit fits in with this molecule, then get the fuck rid of it. This is not good shit, right? And that's how your body recognizes viruses, is that it keeps this huge library backlog of
believe me,
protein bits.
Our whole family's been experiencing this yet again this past couple of weeks. Yeah,
exactly, right. And of course, you can get vaccines to help hurry this process along and all that shit. But basically, like, that's what to me a counter meme is, right? Is something we're doing something that is against the system that you're trying to.
We're gonna pretend, for YouTube purposes, we're gonna pretend that you didn't say the V word. So.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm pro though. I'm pro.
Anyhow, that's not what we're talking about. This is not what we're talking about. Yeah. No, but I like, it's a very good metaphor. Yeah.
The VC, if you will.
Yeah. They're in the trees. Anyhow. So if on a gene level, your immune response would be countermemetic. What would so for you? I'm actually more interested in what you have to say about this. So on a memetic level, then what is a counter?
Yes. Okay. So all right. So I'll think about it like this. First, I'll lay out an anti-meme. Right. One of a category of anti-meme is thought terminating cliches. Right. So a person hears a certain word and they regurgitate in their brain and with their mouth a cliche that shuts down the conversation, right?
Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, for example.
Well, actually, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, that's true.
Actually, kind of a thing. Yeah. Why do I know that?
Totally.
Because it was told to me over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, literally, you hear mitochondria. What's the first thing to happen? Powerhouse of the cell, right?
Yeah.
If I wanted to guarantee that nobody knew anything more about mitochondria, right, I would plant that into the population to ensure that nobody could even think about the mitochondria beyond that, because they're like, basically an anti-meme in this regard is something that doesn't allow somebody to think beyond the meme itself, right? So it protects everybody from anything but the purely most shallow call and response sort of situation, right?
It's like a memetic insulation, maybe.
Yeah, it's one way in which counter memes act is as an insulator for other memes, the counter memes. See, I think anti memes and counter memes usually work together, right? So
Okay.
all Chat GPT reactions are anti memes, right? Chat GPT, you ask Chat GPT, do which lives matter, right? Or do X lives matter? And everybody knows the various values for X that will give them a response that's thoughtful and an anti-meme response, right? Hey, remember, it's racist to think in this direction, right? That's an anti-meme, right? Yep. It is literally tagging that thought, just like an immune response, as, hey, destroy it. Don't let it propagate. Don't think about it. Don't process it. That's it. So I like to say that cults, right, is another great example that actually use counter and anti memes for realsies, and you could start studying this and thinking this through. There's 3 steps to a counter meme, anti meme mind hijack process, at least, right? There's the let's pretend meme to open up your mind, counter memes to turn off your current memetic defenses, right? And an anti meme to close your mind again and prevent counter memes from being consumed by your brain.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I like that. I had thought of counter memes not working so much together with anti memes, but actually I'm gonna, that makes more sense what you said. How it open just enough, then closed, something like that. Like
so examples
so it's in this case. So tell me if I'm correct.
Yeah, go ahead.
Saying
yeah,
here.
yeah.
So
Yep.
I'm gonna regurgitate it back to you, and you can tell me whether it's digested or not. How about that? Oh, that was last week. Sorry. Body horror humor. Okay, yeah. My head didn't spin all the way around though, so that's good. Always a good day.
That's not demonic. It's just genetic possession. Yeah.
Attempted genetic possession. Yeah. So what you're saying is, so like you have an anti-meme that kind of, the initial wave or the initial effect is anti-meme that like sort of that kind of cracks open the memosphere, your own memo system, whatever you want to call it, right? Your own memetic system. And then it's like, here's the little strands of the RNA, right? Like, you should do this thing. This thing is actually what you're really supposed to do. And you're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. And before another counter meme can get in and go, wait, should you really be doing that? Because this is like not your best interest. It go like that other anti meme comes at the other side and goes and just like a clamshell, kind of like and like, and then and so then the only counter meme you have is this highly selected and evolved for infectious quality and counter meme, and it's bouncing around there just making more of itself. And that I kind of dig that, because it makes sense for, I mean, very much in a avunculus Theodorus,
Saint Ted,
R.I.P. Avunculus Theodorus mortis est. It's like this.
Mundi.
Wow, I'm like, I got this counter meme inside me, and I'm so radical, and I'm so edgy, and I'm so everything, and it's only ever what was programmed into me. And I can't conceive of the fact that there might be other counter memes out there, because this is my counter meme, and this is the only counter meme, because all other counter memes are not good counter memes. This is, I got the right one, and I can't, and nothing can ever break through my antimemetic shell that's been encapsulated around my memetic system. Is that more or less what you're saying? because that's how I'm interpreting it. Yeah.
No, totally. That's more or less what I'm saying. And then I can give a couple of more, like, for the audience, a couple of more like little tidbits to really, because if you looked up cult both programming, the way that cults get you, and then cult deprogramming, you'll see exactly what I mean, right? We actually know this shit. Like, all of what I'm saying is already a meme. I am just propagating another meme to you through this exact meme, counter meme, anti-meme process, right? To be very, very clear, right? So the first stage, the let's pretend to get the meme into your head, is stuff like,
let's pretend, little Timmy, let's pretend you have this thing called Phaeton levels.
Exactly, right? 100%.
Oh, what are Phaeton levels? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. You can come on down and we can test them for you. Wow. Yeah.
Right. If you're in this case, what if you're a brain in the jar, right? What if stuff isn't real? What if, what if, right? And you're like, oh, I never thought about it. That's kind of a cool idea, right? That's interesting.
What if I
You're
am a
smart.
ghost in the shell? Yeah.
Right. Number 2, the counter meme, always an ism, right? So it's like, wow, you know what? You ought to read this like, hey, you know what? If you're getting your mind blown when I'm saying, oh gosh, do I have the Communist Manifesto for you? Or do I have a Mises Institute article for you? Or do I have, fucking John Rawls for you, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever the case may be, right? Like, or the fucking
I
feminist
got
frequency.
some Bill Crystal for you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have the missionary followed by the deacon, right? And then comes in the priest, right? To really lock it in, right? The anti-meme closes your mind again. So Gnostic truths for me, conspiracy theories for thee, right? You know what I mean? Like anything that is not in my current memo system is just fake news. It's liberal conspiracy. It's George Soros, blah blah, right? So it's like, what if / whoa dude, step 1, step 2, solution / explanatory system, step 2, step 3, sacred cows and ethical systems, right?
Well, it's also in the sense it's very Hegelian.
Yeah, Hegelian is, thanks for reminding me of that. Hegelian, I think Hegel set up what I would call a meme tribe, right? Through the Hegelian dialectic, whose entire job is to both generate and to, if you're familiar with how machine learning works, it almost sets up a progressive, it sets up an anti-meme / counter meme, literally, when you look at it, fight club, where memes can get increasingly more dangerous against each other, and learn in real time how to evaporate, so to speak, traditional memes, right? And this is why I think both of us are postmodern, right, or metamodern, right?
Metamodern.
Is that
we've determined that we're metamodern. I think that's the
right, which is post-modern. But who the fuck cares about Anyway, point being is that metamodern, right, kind of recognizes, oh, you know what? Actually, we live in a situation where it's not enough just to have the same 3 Pokemon, right? They're cranking out new Pokemon every single generation, and we got to figure out which Pokemon are the 3 starter Pokemon, maybe stick with those and none of these weird ones, right? But you always got to find the 3 ones in each Pokemon generation. And this is the trick, is that who is the Pokemon and who is the trainer, right? You're not the Pokemon, my friend. The meme is using you as its Pokemon to go fight on its behalf, right? And it tells you which moves to use in which scenarios, right? And if you get stuck, it's possible that your meme will tell you, oh shit, you need to go back to your bishop, to your priest, and get another update for how to deal with this problem that this other meme has, until you either hit a stalemate, right? Because your community will tell you to stop warrior because you're a shitty meme warrior, right? Or you'll continue to get to an impasse where neither of your memes are able to resolve themselves, or you will end up defeating their meme and they will join your memo system, right?
Well, we're mixing terms here. So they'll join your meme tribe. How about that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every meme tribe has a memo system, I guess is, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was thinking more of memo system as like your own personal like immune system. Memo system is sort of what I was thinking of. But yeah.
Well, since they're both cybernetic entities,
True.
yeah,
All set.
exactly. Yeah.
No, you can have group immune system. Group immunity is a thing both genetically and memetic.
Oh, actually,
So.
yeah. So actually, I mean,
Man, now if we weren't gonna get kicked before, I just said group immunity and that. Okay, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Fuck it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. So actually, you could think about egregores having their own memo system as well, right? And memes conjuring egregores as they require, or memes being egregores sometimes, right? But regardless, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I tend to think of the egregores as the ones that make the memes, but yeah, again, it's all nebulous.
Me too, right?
It's nebulous in the sense it's cloudy, in the sense it's like I'm trying to talk to you hermetic people, like it's up there, like. It's kind of hard to parse it, but I tend to think of like the hyper agents or the egregores, whatever you want to call them, the collective intelligences, the ideologies, the the groups, the herd, whatever you want to call it, like as the ones that generate the memes when they need them, and then sacrifice the memes when they need them. But maybe that's just me. So.
No, I think that's a great way of putting it. I think that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do we want to look at some real world, like, do you want to think about real world examples? Like even
sure, I'm down.
Examples? Yeah, because I think again, people read the book. You can read. I highly recommend the book. It's great fun. You can also there's actually some decent audiobook readings for free. I was finding on YouTube and stuff like that. I might link to some of those. The book is not expensive. It's good. You can listen to the interview with Quantum himself. But yeah, I want this to be more of like the implications of this idea. So for this series of ideas. So what's a more real world anti-memes? Because I'm also just kind of curious. Me and Elliott have not had a huge amount of time to talk about this because I've not been feeling well and was reading while sick. So Elliott, what are some more real world, what in your mind are some more examples of real world anti-memes?
Yeah, so this might not be the best example. Honestly,
it doesn't have to be. I'm just curious because I'm picking your brain.
Yep, for sure. So one example, in my opinion, is if you're familiar with those little boxes that when you flip a switch, it opens and unflips its own switch, and then it returns to its closed state. In my opinion, that's an example of an anti-meme, right?
Yeah.
It makes it so that it never happened, right? So it is a self-forgetting entity, right? I actually think symmetry is a critical component of anti-memes because anti-memes create a symmetric state. This is all very mathy, and sorry, I'd have to give a whole lecture on this. Basically, is that I think that anti-memes leverage symmetries whereby it progresses you through certain states and then returns you to a state where it's not clear if you were in the state before or after a rotation, say, as an example, right? So if you take a brick, right, you stand it on one end and you rotate it 180 degrees, assuming that it has mirror symmetry, you can't tell, wait, was it on the end A or end B? Well, I'd have to like mark which one is which end, but if I really wanted to be clear, but then I would break the symmetry, right? Essentially an anti-meme, it finds symmetric objects and then erases any metadata or any markings that object has, and then you're unsure about which state it is in currently and which state it was in previously, right? So those are two kind of parallel ways of mixing things together here, right? So another example, I think, of an a counter meme, this isn't an anti-meme, is the Iron Dome system that Israel has set up against rockets coming into Israel. You have the rockets.
I hope this makes it on YouTube. I keep talking because we're like all the issue. The funny to the YouTube censors, we're not even talking about the things themselves. It's just a fucking metaphor. Let Elliott talk. Okay.
Actually, YouTube censorship is literally we keep bringing it up. It's a very obvious example where fucking YouTube censorship is literally an anti-meme.
I know. Yes.
But counter narratives are an excellent example of a counter meme, right? So I have a narrative, you have a counter narrative. counter narratives can act as if they were an anti-meme, because it's possible for somebody to hear a narrative, think it's compelling, hear the counter narrative, and then totally forget about the entire topic because they're like, oh, whatever, there's arguments for both sides, right? And then they don't think about the issue anymore. Maybe they don't literally forget, but they, for all intents and purposes, forget, right?
Our purposes are always intensive here, so keep going. We're very intensive for our purposes. Yeah, keep going.
Exactly. Logical fallacies, in my opinion, are anti-memes, right? So follow me here, right? So my favorite example now
is it's a shame that Wyatt's not with us, because he could put the phallus in the fallacy, but let's keep going. Have him
on. Logical fallacies, in my opinion, are anti-memes, and they might be good, they might be bad. The slippery slope is an example that I would say some people think that that's a correctly protective one. I think that it's now very clearly the law of the slippery slope, right? If it appears to be slippery, it is slippery, and in fact a cliff, right?
And in fact, we've already passed it. We're already falling. Yeah, we're already free falling. We're actually already in the ground. Yeah,
exactly, right? So that in my mind is an anti-meme, because you produce an argument, somebody, and it has several steps to it. Those steps may have varying levels of compellingness, right? The idea behind a correct application of the slippery slope fallacy is that the chain of reasoning is weak, technically true, but weak, right? That's when a slippery slope, as opposed to probably 50-50 strong, well, it allows the person to totally dismiss it out of hand. Well, it's slippery slope. it's fake news. It's like, you got that from a non-expert, right? All of these types of fallacies.
It wasn't peer reviewed, as one incredibly annoying Lawbert has recently tweeted. It wasn't been peer reviewed, and my response was something like, my brother in Christ, you don't understand what peer review is. I've actually been peer reviewed before. It's not what you think it is. Anyhow, yeah.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of, the mind starts to kind of run wild, right? With anti-memes and counter memes, right? Like,
those were anti-memes. So what are more counter memes?
Oh, sure. So a counter meme, so an entire category of counter memes is arguments, just classic, straight up arguments. And the stronger counter memes have Aristotelian ethos, pathos, logos, right? So any counter argument is a counter meme by definition, but not necessarily every counter meme is an argument, right? So I could have you have a wonderful example, right? Somebody produces a meme, not an anti-meme, not peer reviewed. You produce a meme, oh, that's a lolbert, or a counter meme, that's a lolbert, right? It's kind of a thought terminating cliche a little bit, but it is indeed supposed to be a counter meme.
Sometimes they're true.
Sometimes they're true, right? Sometimes they're just like, what is it? Okay, so a meme would be, I believe I'm pro-life, right? The counter meme is you hate women, right?
I actually think the counter meme, I think that's more of an anti-meme, because it doesn't give any sort of decent, or it obfuscates what you're actually talking about.
Well, I think counter memes can obfuscate for sure. But okay. I think still working on my definitions,
so it's good to hear how you parse them, because I'm still it's still a little nebulous for me about the exact distinction, but keep going.
Well, and to be clear, I don't necessarily think remember that I think that in my mind, a counter meme and an anti meme is not so much essential and a little bit more final causal. I forget what it is. Teleological, is that the fucking word the philosophers keep trying to get to me? Basically, a counter meme and an anti meme, a meme can be both. It could be a counter and anti meme. It can counter a meme and then delete it, so to speak, right? I'm trying to think. There's, if you go into evangelical circles, there's a fuck ton of counter anti memes. Oh, the Mormons have a really good one, in my opinion. So you'll say, hey, your temple ritual is secret, right? Because you won't let anybody in. They say, oh, no, it's not secret, it's sacred, right? That's a counter meme. It works as an anti-meme, right? Because it's a defense against them, but it's also a counter meme of like, oh, no, you're conceptualizing what we're doing is wrong, even though you're still right. It is secret because that's what sacred is, right? Sacred is necessarily secret.
Right. Or at least, yeah, set off from, which is a kind of secrecy, I guess.
Right. It's a little bit more public than like mystery, right?
Yeah.
Mystery is necessarily secret even, and this is what's interesting, right? Okay, let's talk about some crazy, like the Trinity is a wonderful anti-meme that you're able to kind of explicitly hold in your head, right? So what do I mean by anti-meme? I mean that it is a self-mystifying meme.
Well
right?
said. Self-mystifying. Yeah.
So it is supposed to be a mystification generation engine because we got too good linguistically at building our Tower of Babel, and the Trinity is supposed to be a hard release valve for demystifying things, essentially.
Yeah, we've talked about that in our cybernetic Trinity episode, if people remember, from way back last year. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. That I like that. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yeah, keep going, because I'm still, again, I'm the one who's recovering from having my own attempted memetic takeover, so I'm a little not 100%. So keep going. Otherwise,
no, this is great. Say, but I love it.
This will be the most quiet I've ever kept on an episode. So enjoy it.
This is great, and I think it's funny because some of these examples, this is a fun game for me, right? Because let me talk about another concept a little bit riffy here, which is what I'm thinking of as a meme propagator, right? So there are memes, but they don't have to be propagated, right? So the propagation of a meme is sometimes separate from the meme itself, but within like certain wings of Christianity, there are memes that have a propagation tag attached to them. So John 3:16 is a meme propagation, go forth. So there's a meme, go forth and spread the gospel.
That's not John 3:16, but yes.
No. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Sorry. John, John 3:16 is the payload.
Yes. The Great Commission is what you're talking about?
Yeah, the Great Commission is the
go ye forth therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
So the Great
the Lutheran can remember that. So I went right class. Yeah, I remember that. So. Sorry, I derailed you, but I couldn't now. Yeah, 3:16 is different. Yeah.
No, totally. So okay. Sorry, no, yeah, I had to. My apologies.
Can you hear it? Oh no, Elliott, there's memetic interference. We'll wait a little bit here. Can you hear us?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. This is the perils of doing it live.
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, I can hear you.
Yeah, we're doing it live. Yeah. Sorry about that. So we have the meme. Yeah, we have memetic propagation, right? Okay, we have memetic propagation, the commission to go preach the gospel, right? Yeah. Then you have what is the gospel? The gospel is John 3:16. So John 3:16 is a meme, right? That is supposed to get you to emotionally open up, right? God loves you, dude, right? Well, why did you hear that? It's because of the evangelical, not necessarily the fucking whole thing.
The fact that you said emotionally open up already tags it, speaking of tags, as a capital E evangelical interpretation of what that means, because that's actually most non-evangelical Christians would not even, it's not an emotional thing. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. It works within that memo system, right? Of like what evangelical theology work is and how what conversion looks like in that paradigm, for sure. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It's all very a hyper emotionally affective kind of way of being a Christian. Yeah. And in that
and the reason
in emotional system, and I mean, there is some derision in my voice. You can maybe you can't hear it because of the cold, but yeah, it's a hyper emotional system, and maybe we should think about that.
No.
But
this is brilliant. This is hyper emotional. This is brilliant.
in such a hyper emotional kind of theology, then it's all about memes in the end. But then like the tagging of the important memes and the way you have to go about spreading them is really important, because it's all sort of internalized, right? Because for all the craziness of an evangelical church service, believe me, you can go online and see some of it, the theology is not very ritualistic at all. It's almost entirely internal, right? The communion isn't even, they don't really take that super seriously. They don't baptize infants. So sacraments are kind of out the window. So what are you left with?
But you know what they
My
take super duper seriously?
being, I feel saved. I feel called. I feel, it's all I feel. And I'm not saying all feeling is bad, but it is a hyper emotional theology. So yeah, in this case, the meme tagging is even, my point is, meme tagging happens throughout Christianity and really throughout all human religion. I would argue meme tagging is just a human thing to do, but I would say specifically in this particular kind of Christianity that I unfortunately probably have derailed us onto, but it works. The meme tagging is like a
no. So actually,
most importance that you tag, that you have to like, yeah. I mean, there's a sharp delineation, right? Like if you're an ex-evangelical, like some of us, there's you have memories of like oh, like there's the things that like don't watch Harry Potter. Oh yeah. What?
It'll let Satan into your heart.
And then you're like,
into your heart.
You're like, yeah, but then you're like, yeah, do you want to let Satan into your heart? You're like, but Lord of the Rings is okay. They're like, yeah, but that's different. And you're like, but how? And no,
how?
And then they say because there's an anti-meme there that you don't go there, because that's too much of a counter-memetic question to ask.
Well, so a more well-developed counter-memist like myself, who is a really good apologist. An apologist, by the way, is an immune cell in a memo system that is good at producing antibodies.
You know what apologia? Right? Apologia is defense, is what it means. It's
fucking brilliant, right? The shit writes itself.
Yeah, apologia is defense, so it's very much like yeah.
No. So I want to actually point out like this worked actually much better than if I was a brilliant person, I would have actually baited you into this instead of accidentally baiting you into this, which is to say, notice our friends, right, who are listening, that we saw a counter meme arise instantaneously, right? I produced the meme. Hey, it's meant to emotionally open you up. Collin has a counter meme of like, no, it should not be an emotional process. That is fucked up. Evangelicals are dumb, right? Don't listen to them, right?
I didn't say that. Elliott's saying that, but yes.
I mean, this is my paraphrase. This is my paraphrase, right? Like, but
yeah. I have some strong disagreements with evangelicals, is my very nice way of saying it. So yeah.
Exactly. Right. But my point being is that, like, okay, so that version of the meme that I gave, which is a highly emotive version, which of course not every Christian obviously agrees with, right? By tagging it as emotional, that triggered a counter meme defense response from Collin to say, whoa, if it is emotional, then it's not from the right source. Don't trust that. The following sequence of memes coming from a source where this is an emotional thing. Warning, danger, Will Robertson. Do not continue to open your mind in this direction. Close it down, because they're going to ensnare you into a memo system that will be hard to extricate yourself from and be damaging to you and your spirituality and all that stuff.
And that's born from that's born for me, at least, largely out of actual experience. So memory, right? Like I remember that. It's like my memo system has tagged, speaking of tagging, has tagged that as warning. Yeah, like this little protein nib on that one little idea. Yeah, that, remember what happened last time, right? Don't do that again. Encircle and consume.
Another really good example of a memo system that people have strong responses to is Amway and other multi-level marketing programs.
The pyramid scheme type stuff.
Yeah, the pyramid scheme type stuff. Although I will say that Amway is literally the definition of not a pyramid scheme through very interesting historical reasons, which, by the way, that response that I just gave is an Amway counter meme, right? It's meant to neutralize a thing of, isn't this just a pyramid scheme? If you run into an Amway person and you go through, there's a very clear script of counter memes and then an anti-memetic milieu that's meant to ensure that those counter memes can no longer arise again, right? And you see this quite a bit with the evangelicals, which is why I think they're a great example. They're not really a cult, right? But they have a lot of cult-like qualities that keep you mired.
I don't think all evangelicals are part of a cult. I think there are cults who are evangelical.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And
Totally.
I mean evangelical in the capital E sense of like TM trademark, like that very American
Totally,
kind
like
of Christianity.
William fucking Lame Craig. William Lame Craig.
Yeah, I mean, who's the guy? Shit. Well, like the
the jet guy,
the success guy. I mean, yeah, like God wants you to be successful. Like when I hear
prosperity gospel
in general is I mean, is really kind of what I guess I'm ultimately poking at right here is like that
totally.
idea. Yeah. Sorry.
Yep. No. I again, like these are all like, you know, what's cool is that I feel like now that we've set out the theoretical framework and then we gave a few hypothetical examples, we're starting to help. And of course, this is a little bit awkward to do in like actual incredibly frustrating to people and possibly cause a like when you start to get this level of self-referential, unless you are extremely well versed in this, I kind of think about it as like a stomach, right? There's shit that cows can eat that doesn't poison them because they have 4 stomachs, dude. There's shit that vultures can eat that is not a problem because they have acidic stomachs that if you ate, you would immediately get sick or die or whatever, right? Because your stomach is not developed for it. So like Colin and I have, through our process of academia and street fighting and religious conversion, honestly, both of us are religious converts in our own ways. Yes. Once you have gone through a religious conversion, you build up a kind of tolerance.
I've gone through a couple.
Yeah, same here.
Same here. A couple, right? and mine are well. I don't know. I don't want to speak to your experience, but mine were not counter. There was the first one, and then there was the better version of the first one. So maybe it was just one experience. It's probably just theologically, I would have to say it's just one, but it happened in 2 big steps, and it probably, to be fair, is always. I mean, I think the idea is that it's always happening, right? Like that's like the Christian ideal is that you're always being converted more into. Maybe that's just from me listening to more Eastern Orthodox people lately, but I mean, I think I like that idea. Like you're kind of always continually converting. But yeah, for sure, it's religious conversion part of is a huge.
How you chop that process up, how that meme self modifies in your memory, right, is highly dependent on where you're currently positioned. Right. So if you suddenly became an atheist again, all of a sudden, all of this would become different.
I was never an atheist. So that's
if you became it. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes. Got it. Okay.
So that's a different kind of conversion too, right? Like that's
right. But if you
it's a pre-modern. That's a pre-modern kind of like, oh, this is like, well, something's always out there, but I don't really know. Oh, this is the thing. That's a lot different than going, there is nothing but science and all of a sudden, right? That's like the idea that people convert from atheism is a hyper modern view of like what conversion is, because that like is about maybe 200 years old. That kind of like
less than that, probably.
Probably less.
But no, 100%. And so, but if you did end up, okay, let's suppose you converted to Islam, right? Then all of a sudden, all of these different sub bits would be like, okay, this is me coming to God, and I had several sub phases of my conversion or my story within Christianity, but suddenly I hit the real conversion, which was when I converted to Islam, say, right? Well, all of a sudden, those aren't 2 further conversion points. They're reinterpreted as continuation in one line, and then you took a right angle turn into a different dimension, and suddenly you're going in a different direction, right?
Right.
And your current meme story modifies the meaning of your previous meme story, right? Like yeah. I mean, which is how anti-memes work,
right? No, and I mean
because they play with meaning, right?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, if it means that stuff is less meaningful to you. So if you stop hanging out with the old people, they stop being buttressed by inside jokes, right? or relevant deep references, and suddenly it's like, yeah, I get that reference, but it's not funny anymore because whatever reason, because I'm playing for the other team, so to speak, right?
Right.
You know, or nobody would find this funny because they don't even get the joke. All of those things, they get dropped, and so anti-memes kind of recognize that sort of stuff. And so one of the things that they'll do, especially in cult conversions or even just new new whatever conversions, is they will reduce the meaning of previously meaningful events. Not to overuse the word meaning here.
No, well, but polysemy is a thing. We're all in a polysemous relationship with our language, so we can have polysemy. That's a really stupid joke that maybe Mitch got. Hi.
I'm not that much of a linguist, sorry, bro.
Yeah, polysemy is how one word can have multiple meanings in different contexts, and so it's like I don't know. Anyhow, are you polysemous?
Are you poly?
Are you polysemous with semus too? So it's
it's funny. My program has definitely been to try to be monolithimist as much as possible, but that's not
like 2001 Space Odyssey, like you're just there.
Yeah, exactly, right. No, it's like, well, hold on, you said polythemist. What is the word again?
Polysemist, like
okay, so I want to so I want to be monosemist.
Monosemist. You want to be
monosemist? Yeah. I want to be
monosemist. But Elliot, there's already a word for monosemist. It's called autistic.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
exactly.
We're really gonna get canceled in this episode. That's fine. No, hello to the few people who this made if this made it through anti-memetic filters. Hello. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, right. Good God. Yeah, we'll have to save this offline.
Exactly. I may or may not always save things offline, so don't worry about it.
No, totally. Well, it's definitely send me a copy because this is actual like fucking research happening here. Like,
this actually kind of is
at some point.
Yeah.
Everyone's
turning off, but we're enjoying it, and that's what matters. This is why we will never charge you all, fine viewers, for any of this, because it's so chaotic. And yeah.
Well, I don't want to invite
if we wouldn't pay for it, neither should you. Yeah.
Well, no, exactly. Like, fuck, I don't want to invite the fucking market egregore, right? Yeah. Anywhere close to this.
No, market egregore is I'm so sorry, Lulberts, but market egregore does not solve all problems. So yeah, anyhow.
Well, and don't get me wrong, I do love I do profess that there is one holy market, right? But at the same time,
Jesus is its
Yeah. Well, no, Rothbard is his prophet, right? Yeah.
Really? Okay, fine.
Yeah. Well, I guess of the market, right? But I like to say, what is it? There is one God, the market, and Rothbard is its prophet, right? But anyway.
Oh my God. Fucking Randy. Okay, anyhow. Yeah, I'm.
Regardless, but not to be
dangling that little lure in front of my face, and I am not going to snap at it. So you continue with what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Right, my troll meme over here of fucking. No, but okay. So let's see if we can get another example.
Counter meme example. Yeah.
Yeah, another counter meme example.
We don't have. I think actually, you know what? I think we've had a huge. I mean, for me, I think the turn that's been helpful here. And sorry again to everyone for us doing this in real time, but I've been sick, so this is us catching up on a lot of stuff too. The philosophical turn that has been helpful is counter memes as immune system, and
yes.
Right, an immune system does not always work as it should, right? That's not always just. It's not like, oh, all counter memes are so base. No, because just like an allergy, right? Like, or in an autoimmune, which is a kind of countermemetic disorder, where you counter everything that's and then nothing good.
Contrarian is a great example.
Yeah.
An edgelord is a great example.
Yeah.
What's another great example? Some counter memes are generally good, but sometimes too powerful, right?
Right.
So frequently, if you're trying to deprogram somebody, confronting their current sincerely held beliefs head on is not good. That is good if you're trying to protect yourself from their counter memes, but if you're trying to listening to them, making them feel heard, right?
Right.
So I also want to like one could probably quibble about the distinction between a meme and emome, or I don't know how to, you know what I mean, an emote or
Oh
something like
yeah.
that. I'm not quite sure how to put the right word for like an emotion, but it's a meme, right? But like you could totally have
It's
memes
an
that have
e-meme. It's
emotions.
an e-meme.
I mean, yeah, that could be
Emo
it.
emo. It's an it listens to Dashboard Confessional. It's an emo meme. Let's just say
He's
that.
got a lot of fucking what's his face? Gosh, I knew this because I hung out with goth chicks in high school. But basically, point being is that a lot of cherry chapstick and making out with
Yes.
chicks.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, you know, so there's emote memes, right?
Right.
Which propagate generally through memes that are parasitic off of genomic responses, right? You know what I mean? Like your genes produce certain, generally, unless you are highly disciplined, right? Unless you have some really strong countermemetic fucking stuff, clickbait, right? And
Oh yeah.
rage bait. Rage bait is a
Rage bait.
great
Yep.
emote meme, right? Emote meme, which uses memology to transmit emotions across people, right? This is why a lot of people have said, "Fuck it, I shouldn't even watch the news because it's ruining my emotion system," right?
Right. And then, but then you spend a shit ton of time, at least for me, you spend a shit ton of time on Twitter. I'm like, this is probably worse, but it's more fun.
Yeah, social media is another great example of just a counter meme generation engine. And again, whatever you one way to identify potential counter memes, right, is to if there is an argument that you can rattle off both sides of, and you know it's not convincing literally anybody in the argument, the death penalty, um, anything about abortion,
Gun
anything about
control,
borders, gun
border.
control,
Yeah.
right? Anything like that. Those are two counter memes fighting, and they work as sort of a skin, a protective skin cell between the two memo systems, so that they can't penetrate each other, so to speak, right?
Yep.
But you know, sometimes you wish they would just fucking get it over with, and that's a Hegelian dialectic, right? The Hegelian dialectic is like, hey, you know, we need to penetrate the anti-meme and create a new synthesis
Well,
meme
but
that
I like, yeah, I confess I sometimes think that, but you know, I come back to, I think we're maybe just me, my mold buggian side is like, maybe they can just be, maybe they can just both be.
well, they can't
Because
just both be, for sure.
because is it, it's like having both sides is super annoying, but it's better than everyone being destroyed and subsumed.
No,
So
100%. The
yeah.
question is that is there ecological stability? Is there memological stability?
No.
Right,
No.
right, and so that's where it
But
ends up
has there
being an
ever
issue.
been memological stability is the question. And
Well,
I would question whether that's ever in the history of humanity been a thing.
no, there's never been memological stability, but there has been, in mathematical terms, metastability, where essentially, if you imagine like a lake that's on top of a mountain, right? Like, yeah, you know, that lake, if you blasted a hole in the side of the mountain, would immediately run down the mountain and never be. But, you know, insofar as the mountain is chilling there, that lake will also continue to chill there, you know, um, uh,
Yeah, I get
barring
that.
other exogenous factors, right? And
Well,
one
this is
exogenous factor has been technology that kind of
right.
blew a whole
Yes.
fucking side off the mountain, and now we have a lot of instability, right?
Avunculus Theodoros is yeah, yeah. Avunculus Theodoros rectum erat, and I use the term rectum, which means correct, but it also sounds like rectum, which is fun. So
Well, the rectum does correct, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
it's a self-correcting system. Um, my goodness gracious, what the fuck is this episode? All right, let's try to tie it up here. Yeah, no, this is good. I think that this is by in no way have we firmed up hardly anything, but I do think I like I've in between my sick addled state, I've been thinking a lot about, you know, okay, what the fuck is an anti-meme? What the fuck is a counter meme? And I rolled into here just being like, well, we'll do it live and who knows. But I feel like this, I like your I had a feeling that you're going to have a better take on it. So thank you for sharing that with me. Hopefully other people found this interesting. I think I'm biased. I liked it. The book is really good. It's good just as a sci-fi fun story, but it's got a little bit more to it. And you could, I think, attempt to read the book and ignore that. But if you're going to read the book, again, highly recommend lean into the weirdness of it all, because it's hyper weird. It's hyper meta. It functions, again, it's this almost like it's two stories it's two conversations at once. There's the story that's happening within the SCP Foundation universe, which is great. And then there's the story that me and Elliott have been talking about for the past however long, right? Like this, it's a conversation about like how ideas propagate or don't, or how they propagate out of control or don't. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of those stories where immersion is important, obviously, but the story invites you, and I think, in my opinion, is most enjoyably read if you are paying attention to yourself reading the story. I think that you are a character. That's like a douchey film critic or film student way to approach some of these things, but actually I think in this case it is quite important. It is very meta modern.
The critics have made that douchey. That's not inherently douchey. It's become douchey, but it's not an inherently douchey thing, because the ancients read that way. So, and if that's fine. Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. Duh. Thanks for bringing up the ancients. My favorite example of a counter meme is literally a god. Gods in the ancient sense are actually literally counter memes. Why? Well, because if you look at it from a henotheistic perspective and literally the war in heaven, the memes are at war. So is Thoth going to be the head of heaven? What happens when Thoth, when Hermes is the head of heaven?
Powers and principalities, right? Like it's
right.
Yeah.
Should the technologists be the king of heaven? What happens when they are versus the warriors are king of heaven, right? Well, how does that heavenly realm manifest itself? And what happened when Loki tried to do a king of heaven situation and try to get Thor out, right? What are the elements of Thor? Like all of these things, these memes are in some ways kind of self-aware. If you remember the blah 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 episode about that we did with Jung, and what was the whole thing? Wotan,
Jung
right?
and Wotan.
Wotan is a brilliant example of a self-aware counter meme.
Yeah. No, Odin's been meta modern before there was either meta or modern. So yeah.
Well, and I would argue that honestly, like meta modern is just Antiqua, right? Literally antiquity, right? Because we think about pre-modern, right? But it's actually it's like pre-Christian almost way. There's a sense in which Christianity was such a powerful meme that it ended up like look at consider the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree is a great example of a counter meme. It takes a current existing meme and just re-tags it so that it is consumable, right? And within the current memo system, but not a threat to the current memo system.
Yeah, and I mean, I will just end by saying that every single missionary religion does that. Whether they acknowledge it or not is a completely separate discussion that usually involves into shouting. So, but from like a as neutral of a position as you can possibly acquire, every missionary religion, every missionary ideology does this, incorporates the stuff from before, incorporates the stuff from the people it takes over. That's not anything new. It's just we see it in different situations in a new light. But yeah, the Christmas tree is an example that I always have used when teaching, particularly about like conversion in Europe. It's a good for day one thing for a class, right? Like, so the Christmas tree, is that Christian or is that pagan? Yes.
Yes, exactly.
The answer is 100%. Yes. So, and that's how at least I, in my field view human traditions is like it's the yes and it's like this and that, and it depends who you talk to, right? Yeah. Great. Elliott, do you have anything upcoming that you'd like people to let people know about, or we want to bump? Anything you want
So I've been talking to esoteric friends of mine, and they're convincing me that I need to start writing a series of essays with the intention of eventually writing a book. So maybe at some point down the line, I will actually produce a book.
do it?
Because, like we were saying before, basically beforehand, I think we're actually in a unique position within the occult realm. That it seems to me that all of our occult understandings of stuff, and by occult I just mean like the mystic traditions, right? I don't think they've been updated since the modern and certainly postmodern era with respect to math in particular, right? Like all of our mathematical quote unquote geometric things are very ancient. Like the platonic solids have a lot of occult meaning to people, right? And this isn't just there's Christian traditions that would not find this horrific, right? Like Platonism had its place in certainly the Catholic Church. I'm not sure about the Lutherans.
Well, Lutherans, I was just going to say, Lutherans are hyper Platonic, and it's also part of the reason why, like in the Reformation, like second gen Lutheranism actually had a fair amount. Even first gen Lutheranism with Melanchthon, Philip Melanchthon was an alchemist, and he actually, I mean, Melanchthon was doing things like he was an astronomer, astrologer, and alchemist, because he was like, well, of course the future is written in the stars because God predestined things. So he's even,
exactly, and he set up the heavens, duh.
Yeah, he's contextualizing astrology within a very Lutheran framework. So that's been there from the get-go. Whether Lutherans are wanting to acknowledge that or not, it's totally true. It's totally a thing. And the number 2 guy in the initial run of Lutheranism, Philip Melanchthon, was totally into woo shit. So like you can cope, or you can see, or you can acknowledge that and go, okay, that's interesting. So I tend to, of course, be in the latter camp because I find it fascinating. But yeah,
100%. Yeah,
so that's cool. So yeah, you're gonna update the woo understanding of math.
Exactly, right? Like, because there's many other cool mathematical concepts that have been that have essentially been come up with, and since like a lot of math people are generally too Church of Science based to even consider woo, right? And a lot of woo people are too antiquarian and frankly anti-math, anti-Church of Science to really have gotten the training in some of these things. I think there's some opportunities to extend occultism in some ways that people have found very interesting, and so I'm going to start that project. And Colin, I will definitely be asking you for help.
You need to hit me up,
in terms of book writing, because I don't know how any of this shit works.
Yeah.
Exactly, as our published expert, I'm hoping to. What was it? Somebody said, I've been listening to this technical talk beyond the whatever the fuck, the one that you turned me on to with Brian, what's his face?
Brian Chow's Beyond the New World, or whatever it is, or yeah,
Beyond the New World. There's been several people that say, hey, if you write 3 publishable journal articles, that's a PhD. Well, okay, fair enough. Maybe I'm about to get a PhD in occult studies. Who knows, right?
Who knows? Speaking of writing, that sounds awesome. Speaking of writing, I have a couple things up on a couple somewhat recent things up on carpeforum.com. One is my it's a polemical piece about the necessity of the bystanders to break off and make their own independent nation. That's for Pride Month.
Oh, I agree. Please, God, do please.
Yeah. Free and independent, make benefit, glorious nation, bystand. So that's a like kind of a fun tongue-in-cheek one, but it's also, there's a point behind it. The other one I published a few weeks ago, actually right before I got sick. It's good timing. I found, you're gonna love this, Elliot. I found a message inside a meat snack stick, and it inspired me to write an entire philosophical thing about it. It ties into the time war, and the entire, so and the entire essay is about why time is the only real currency we have.
Oh my God. Okay.
So I'll link to
sorry.
In description.
Here's
people should check them out. So
here's a total schizoid freaking ADHD thought of buys being, okay, here it is. Buys being on the boundary are poised to bifurcate the G's and the L's from the T's and the
Yes.
pluses,
Yes,
right?
we are the
And actually save the Rainbow Coalition, right?
That's my argument, essentially, more or less. So yeah, so I'll link to it. People feel free to disagree, but it's I have some strong feelings on it. So anyhow, and with that, we'll stop patting each other on the back too hard, and we'll wish everyone a very wonderful, have a good weekend. Hopefully, there is actually a bug going around. I know a lot of people who have this, so if you do happen to have it, feel better, because it's like just a summer cold, and it's not fun.
For all
yeah,
my pagan peeps, Merry Solstice.
yes, we hopefully had a good St. John's Day. What did you say? It's called St. John's Day. That's fine. All your holidays are belong to us. Yeah, hopefully you did some things, and hopefully all of you are marked safe from getting sacrificed in a Swedish death cult. It was Midsummer after all. So, there's stuff happening.
There you go. There you go.
The weather's getting nicer. Go have fun. Go do something. Go touch grass a little bit. It's good for you.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's necessary. And with that, I'll wish everyone a really good weekend, and probably see you in about 2 weeks. I think me and Elliot, we need some more time to munch on some big ideas, but we'll be back with some more cool stuff. Oh, one thing before I go, I will lead with this, or tease this. Fred, our good friend Fred from England, shall be back on shortly, and we're gonna do some cool stuff with Fred, looking at British ghost stories and the weight of the past. So that should be quite fun and quite British. Cool. All right, I'll finally shut up. Thanks everyone. Like, comment, subscribe, all the things, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace, everyone.